Hello, fellow Movie Crusaders, and welcome to another episode of the Weekend Crusaders. My name's Sean Wasserkrug. With me, as always, is Brian Michaels as we bring you 5 more movies that came out during this weekend in movie history. We are into October. 9 months we've been doing this show, Brian, and we are now into the Halloween season. We got definitely some horror films here. We got definitely some horror films coming up. 3? Well, one's a nightmare to us when we were watching it, but not really technically a horror. It was a horror for me and probably for you.
Yeah.
But yes, obviously with it being Halloween, you're going to see a lot of horror films popping up here because obviously they came out this month. Hopefully there's some favorites of yours that you like. Obviously our feature's probably a favorite amongst a lot of people, and another one is ones that maybe no one's really ever heard of or seen before. But we're not going to start off with those. We are going to start off with sports. We all love sports. I love sports. Brian kind of likes sports. But we are going to be talking first about our revisited film. I said last week as our tease to the show that this is hands down my favorite hockey film. I like this better than Mighty Ducks and all that stuff. We are talking about the 1999 hockey film Mystery Alaska. Mystery Alaska came out October 1st, 1999, had a budget of $28 million, had a weekend opening of $3.1 million. It was number 9 its opening weekend, and had a finished box office of $8.89 million. Brian, start us off. What are your thoughts on Mystery Alaska?
Well, first of all, I agree with you. It's my favorite hockey movie. It's not saying much because I'm not a big hockey guy, and hockey movies are
I'm not a hockey guy either. I don't really watch the NHL. Like when it's playoffs, I might check out a game.
Even then, hockey is just one of those sports I don't get into. But
yeah, give me some hockey rules. I'll be like,
I mean, I played hockey like back in the PlayStation 2.
I did too. I did too.
But as far as but movies, I tend to enjoy some of them. I mean, I like the Goon movies, things like that. But Mystery Alaska is by far my favorite. This is another one of those movies. I talk about this all the time. That probably wouldn't get made today, or at least not theatrically released, because it's not a blockbuster and it's not an indie. It's that mid-range kind of film. But those tend to be the ones I think are the best, but they also get the most overlooked. This is one of those movies that a lot of people have not seen, but if you mention it and someone has seen it, they're always like, "Oh, I love that movie," because it's got a great ensemble cast, which aside from Russell Crowe, is also, like I've talked about before, the kind of cast that I love, which is like a lot of kind of not A-list big megastars, but like just a solid supporting cast.
They're either like C-level actors, or they're like older actors that maybe aren't doing big stuff anymore, like Burt Reynolds, or they're TV show actors that you're like, oh, that person from that show, and all that.
I mean, you got Hank Azaria, Ron Eldard, who I think most people at least at the time knew from ER, Cole Meany from Star Trek.
That's how I
Scott Grimes, who I actually like, Adam Beach, Kevin Durant, who is actually in a lot of movies I like. I mean, there's a whole list of people, and it was a good ensemble cast they put together. It's a very lighthearted movie. Sometimes sports movies get a little bit too into the whole, the inspirational kind of side of it, and that's fine. Those are good movies, but this is one that kind of just has like a lighter, fun tone. And while there is kind of that, the suspense and stuff of how the game's going to end up, that kind of thing, it's really one of those movies that's more about like the players and the relationship between the characters. And so I just had a lot of fun with this one.
What's funny is that you mentioned one guy from ER and you totally didn't acknowledge the other guy from ER. Because Ron Eldard, he's from like the first few seasons of ER, and Scott Grimes is in the later seasons of ER.
Well, I mentioned Scott Grimes. Yeah, I did.
You did mention him, but you didn't. I was like, when he said, "Yeah, I'm from ER," I'm like, that's not Scott Grimes.
Was Mary McCormick on there too at some point?
She did. She was on
her.
Yeah. She was like a doctor or a nurse. I can't really remember. She was it was like a 5-episode kind of arc kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But yeah, this is and also one of my favorite guys. I've mentioned him on the show before, Kevin Durant, who to me is always the best big guy that has so much charisma and comedy, but it's just not given. Like, he's well liked by everybody, because anytime he's in a movie, everyone points like, that guy was great.
He's always like henchman number one,
Yeah, he's henchman number one, or he's big menacing guy, or in this one, he's the lovable big guy. And I love Kevin Durant, and it's hard not to say Durant because it's so close.
Right.
but I love him, and then of course I like the rest of the Russell Crowe pre-Gladiator, which most people didn't recognize Russell Crowe before that. So a lot of people got introduced to Russell Crowe in Gladiator. This was the year before that.
His kind of big breakthrough originally was LA Confidential 2 years before this, where he won his Oscar, but he didn't start starring in movies till about this year.
And see, with you and I, we love having this conversation. It was like, what is the first movie that you took notice of an actor? This was my first taking notice of Russell Crowe, and then Gladiator obviously was the year after. This was my introduction to Russell Crowe, and I love Hank Azaria. Obviously, Burt Reynolds is Burt Reynolds. I have this, I don't know why, but I have this weird crush on Mary McCormick. I have always had a thing for her. So seeing her in this, I mean, she looks great for just being like I don't want to say generic, but just being like simple housewife. I'm like, it's Mary McCormick, man. It's like, you're doing good, man. Was it Lolita Davidovich? I love her, especially what movie I brought up many times on the show, Play to the Bone. She's fantastic in that. She gets not a whole lot to do in this outside of like a couple scenes, but seeing her, it's like, it just makes me think of Play It to the Bone. Obviously, I love Scott Grimes, and of course, Ron Eldard as Skank. I mean, he's clearly the funny guy. And then I didn't recognize her. I recognize her now, but obviously, younger me when it first came out, I didn't recognize her. Is it Sheila, the one who hits him with the shovel? The one who makes the fat comments about, and she takes it out on him. I think it's Sheila.
I think so. Who played that? I didn't.
No, it's Sarah. Sarah Hines. Sarah Hines is the character, but that's Megan Price. I know her from Rules of Engagement. She's on The Ranch.
Okay, that's why I haven't really watched those.
Grounded for Life with Donald Logue.
Donald Logue, yeah.
Logue, who I love. I love her. I didn't recognize her throughout, but when I saw her, I was like, oh. It's like, and I mean, she got
it's just one of those casts that's full of those people. It's like, oh, that guy, oh, her.
Yeah, I love this, but I mean, the great part about this, it's an R hockey film, which I mean, we've had those with Goon, which I've never seen the Goons, but we have Slapshot. No, I never. So shockingly, because of Sean William Scott, I've never seen the Goons, but I love this movie is what it's gonna be when literally the first scene of the movie is a girl getting railed outside of a trailer hearing Skank, and then Russell Crowe's little kid saying, "Fuck me." You're like, oh, okay, this is
that kind of movie.
This is clearly in our film. But I love the story of Mystery Alaska. I mean, clearly you got all these small towns. Usually it's like Friday Night Lights, where it's like, oh, it's a football town. This is the best football team ever. And it's like, you're a good football team in this county. If you went up against the big dogs, you probably wouldn't be that big. And here we have that with hockey in Alaska. And I love the concept of the story. I love how they kind of interwove it in the story, where they have the three eldersmen of the town makes the team, and all that kind of stuff. And then bring the New York Rangers, which if I was rooting for a hockey team, it is the New York Rangers, or it would have been the Sharks or the Mighty Ducks, because Mighty Ducks. But I mean, you take a team like that, because everyone always wants to root against New York, which granted, I hate the Yankees, but I like the Rangers. And you bring them in, and it's a passionate. I would say it's like hockey's version of Rocky. Because they are underdogs. They just want to be noticed. They want to be respected. And when they get this opportunity and they know it's probably not going to work out for them, but they have to have the will and the determination to go out there and try to do it. And when it inevitably happens, what happens, I'm glad it had that ending. I'm glad I didn't do the whole, oh my God, the upset and stuff like that. And it's and I love the way they ended the film. It's a beautiful ending, and then obviously the way it actually ends with Banks, which another hockey player, awesome hockey player with the last name Banks, Mighty Ducks, now this, and Weeks. Their characters moving on through that. I love the story of that. I love Russell Crowe's story, even Hank Azaria's story. It's selfish, but you get it. You understand his story. And then even like there's that one moment right before the big match or the big game where him and Russell Crowe are talking, and Russell Crowe's like, "You just don't get it, do you?" And like you have that conversation, and it kind of opens up Hank Azaria's eyes. Hank Azaria is criminally underrated. I think anyone who watches TV and movies knows how amazing Hank Azaria is. And he like this and like Mystery Men, like those are like his two biggest films, I would say.
Yeah, he hasn't had a big film career. He's done a lot of TV kind of stuff.
But he's so good. And but yeah, I love the story. I love the hockey of it. Yeah, there's not a whole lot to not like.
There's the only thing I don't like about it. And first of all, this is directed by Jay Roach, who this might be.
I know you're gonna go with this.
This might be one of the only Jay Roach movies I like.
Don't like Love Guru.
Austin Powers and Meet the Parents and Dinners for Schmucks and Campaign, and his movies are just not.
Okay. You named two shitty films right there.
I named like 4 or 5 right there.
No, you named Campaign, which was not good, and you named Dinner for Schmucks, which was horrible.
But and both Meet the Parents movies and 3 Austin Powers.
The first 2 Meet the Parents were not bad.
Anyway, my point being, so of course he had to bring in Mike Myers to be in there and doing his total stereotypical Canadian. It's just like, it just seemed out of place in the movie. It seemed like putting a Saturday Night Live sketch in the middle of this movie.
But it almost feels wrong with Mike Myers not being there, because it feels like a movie that Mike Myers probably would have pitched to Jay Roach. It really does.
See, I don't see that at all. I see this as like, while it's comedy, I think it's more serious than Mike Myers, are almost like spoof-like. And so when he shows up in movies like this, or he shows up in Inglourious Bastards, or he shows up in
Mike Myers is allowed to do
it just takes you out of a movie, because the problem is if he was doing serious acting, but he's not. He's usually kind of doing this weird little character thing, and it doesn't fit in this kind of movie. But anyway, that's the only thing I think that I could say that I didn't really like about the movie.
I knew watching it, and then granted, yes, Mike Myers' character is it's a shtick. It is. I mean, at least he's not doing the fat bastard.
The right kind of movie wouldn't bother me. I didn't hate Mike Myers, just didn't fit in this movie.
Yeah, I knew watching this, like, this is gonna be the part that Brian hates. Like, I'm watching it. I was like, this is gonna be the part that Brian's gonna bring up, and I'm gonna have to try to defend it. And I can't necessarily defend it, but it's just one of those things where it's like, it's hockey. Literally all through Mike Myers' SNL career and stuff, hockey's always kind of been there.
Canada and hockey, yeah.
Yeah, with Wayne's World, he's always got, he's got the Detroit Red Wings like jersey. Like, they literally hang out at a restaurant with a giant ass hockey.
Which, I'm sorry, it was supposed to be Aurora, Illinois. He would not be wearing a Detroit Red Wings jersey. Just saying. Anyway,
I'm just saying, hockey's always been there. So him showing up, like, that makes sense. But yes, he does do the whole shtick deal, which you can either let that ruin the film, or you can just kind of go,
it didn't ruin it. Like I was saying, if I had to pick one thing, the only thing that I didn't really like as much as the rest of the film, that would be it. That's all I'm saying.
But I mean, like, it's one of those things where this is a cast that, once again, if you don't watch a whole lot of TV, a lot of these faces aren't going to, really ding, 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 ding to your head. People like Brian and I, yes, this is the cast where we're like, I can't hardly wait. We're pointing out people like, oh. And they're all doing a great job. Yeah. They're all playing their roles great. I mean, I will say, if there is a weak one, well, I mean, there are weak ones in there, but if there is a weak one, it's probably Burt Reynolds' daughter. Like, that whole subplot with her and Weeks about trying to have sex and stuff like that. But it did give a great line when Weeks gets knocked out. He wakes up and says the line. It's like, okay. And then of course, he's in the locker room and he talks to Scott Grimes, and he's down again. It's a great little thing there, but it's just like the whole connections tissue of their story is whether or not they have sex kind of thing. And then Colma, is it Meany? Yeah. I've never really been a big fan of him. It just feels, I feel like he always plays the same type. And that's probably that's what he is. Like, that's just his character. And this is probably him at, I guess, his most likable, which is, weird to say, kind of thing. Because, I mean, this is probably where I guess he's the less dickish he's ever been in a film, and he's still a dick
in a film. He was good on Star Trek. So
I didn't watch Star Trek. Yeah. At least I know the show you're talking about. I didn't watch that Star Trek, but yeah, Mystery Alaska. If you guys have never heard of this film, then you probably don't like sports films. Because if you're a sports fan or a sports movie person, I think everyone has heard of Mystery Alaska. They might not have seen it, They all heard of Mystery Alaska. If you guys have never checked it out, this is definitely a hockey film. Even if you're not a hockey fan, I think you will still enjoy the film for what it is. Like I said, Russell Crowe in one of his first kind of leading films outside of Confidential, that branched off to Gladiator. And like I said, the rest of the cast, Mary McCormick, Scott Grimes, Kevin Durant, all of them, I think are really, really solid all the way through. And like I said, the hockey's pretty fun to watch as well. Is this on anything?
Not for free, no. Gotta rent it.
Not for free. It's definitely. I always thought this was a Disney film, and then I was like, no, this is totally not a Disney film.
It's the Disney company. It's like Disney owned like Touchstone, and they owned Hollywood Pictures. I think it's under the Touchstone label.
I always thought it was a Disney movie for some weird reason.
But it's not actually. No, they don't put the Disney. That's the reason they made Touchstone in that. Is because they won't put out R-rated movies under the Disney label.
Kind of like how Disney Plus is putting all the R stuff on Hulu because they don't want it on Disney Plus.
Basically, yeah, because they don't want to put the Disney name on it, so they put it out under a separate thing. Yeah,
exactly. But anyway, if you guys want to check that out, I think you can rent it for like $3 on Amazon or some other like Vudu or what have you. It's definitely worth checking out. It's, like I said, Brian and I's favorite hockey film. And I had a blast going back and revisiting that film. Coming up next is going to be my pick, and we're going to stick with sports. Instead of breaking them up, we usually like to break up the genres so that way we're not going back to back. But this time we're going to actually do both sports films. Mine is a film that I knew from a very young age, and I didn't get all the jokes when I watched them younger. I got the jokes now, and that is the Tom Selleck baseball comedy, Mr. Baseball. Mr. Baseball came out October 2nd, 1992, had a budget of $40 million, had a weekend opening of $5.24 million. It was number 3 its opening weekend, and a finished box office of $20.88 million. This was the first time for you watching this, right?
This was. I think this might be the first week that I have 2 first-time watches in a week.
It's very shocking that I'm actually. Well, are you counting the stinker? Because the stinker doesn't count.
Yeah, I was counting the stinker.
Okay, I was like stinker doesn't count because we avoid those films. But yeah, Mr. Baseball. Obviously, I'm from a baseball family. I outside of wrestling, I played baseball for 20 years. So when a baseball film comes out, we as a family always watch it. Outside of that, I really didn't know Tom Selleck because obviously I didn't watch his TV shows or
whatever.
Yeah. The only thing I knew him from was the robot movie with the what is that called with the spider robots? I'm blanking on it.
Is that Capricorn 1 or no? Runaway.
Yeah, Runaway. That's the only thing I remember him from because I remember watching that third act when I was little, where it's like they're going up like an elevator. It's like an unfurnished building. Yeah. That's the only thing I knew Tom Selleck from. So here is a baseball film. Basically, the whole plot of Mr. Baseball is he's kind of in the twilight of his career. He's a power hitter, first baseman. He's not really hitting that well, and a new rookie comes in. And I love that it was Frank Thomas. I love that Frank Thomas. They actually brought in somebody like a legit baseball player to play that character. Not that he has any speaking lines, but just anyone who knows baseball knows that's fucking Frank Thomas right there because he's such an overpowering guy. But he basically loses his starting spot and he gets traded to a Japan team. And it's basically kind of like a fish out of water story where he kind of has to learn the traditions and the rituals and the superstitions of Japan, and basically kind of have to learn that Japanese baseball is not the same as American baseball, and there's all this other subplots in there as well. But yeah, I enjoyed this film. Like I said, when this came out, I was 7 years old. I loved it because it was baseball, and to me, the baseball part was intriguing. The other storylines, I was too young to really understand what was going on for the most part. So
what's a mustache ride?
Exactly. What's a mustache ride? I didn't honestly connect mustache ride to anything until Super Troopers. But yeah, I laughed along with my parents because I was like, oh yeah, they're laughing, I should laugh. Growing up now, watching it now, because it's probably been 15, 20 years probably since I've watched it. Yeah, I got the jokes now. Especially with Mystery Alaska too. Like there were jokes in Mystery Alaska that I maybe didn't get when I was like 15. I definitely got them now. And Mr. Baseball, definitely there are some jokes that I did not get when I was younger that made me laugh more now. Plus Dennis Haysbert, apparently he's my 90s baseball guy. You got him as Pedro Serrano, and then you got him here again as he's not a Serrano character. He's actually kind of playing it pretty straight in this one, but he's Max Hammer Dubois. I love Dennis Haysbert, so watching him in baseball films to me is kind of like Kevin Costner in baseball. They just go together. I enjoy the film. It's not as great as I remember it when I was a kid, but I still enjoyed it. Actually, if anything, it got a half star more because I got the adult jokes this time. But Brian, this was a first time watch for you. What was your thoughts on Mr. Baseball?
It was. Well, this is one I never saw at the time because I mean I'm not a huge sports movie guy, but I'll go see sports movies and things like that. Tom Selleck, Magnum PI was on when I was a kid. I may have caught a few episodes of it there. I'd seen him in some movies here and there, maybe, but nothing. He's more one of those guys who, like, you just know who he is, but you haven't really seen a lot of stuff he's in. I basically knew him as the guy who was almost Indiana Jones. That's all. It's that guy. So I didn't see it at the time. I don't know why. I just didn't bother going to see this one. So I waited till now to watch it. It was fine. I'm not a big Tom Selleck fan, but he's fine. He's never going to be like a favorite actor of mine. I think especially in comedies, I think part of the problem is that he's very much more of a straight man, and so they try and
he's more reactive.
Yeah. But then they put him in this movie, which it's the whole thing, like you said, it's a fish out of water story. It's basically it's like, oh, look how different things are in Japan, which is fine, but it's like that's pretty much the entire movie. There's not a whole lot more to it than that, and so it's kind of spend the time going, okay, we get it, and it's the same kind of thing. And there's things in here that are borderline racist. It's kind of that gung ho kind of thing.
1992, Brian.
It's like Gung Ho, which was like 86 or something like that. That same kind of thing. We're like, this wouldn't fly today, but
one of our other movies definitely wouldn't fly today on certain things. But actually, I think two of our movies that we saw at the time wouldn't fly. But I
mean, this is a movie. I mean, I give it a very average rating on my Letterboxd because there's nothing bad about it. There's nothing I disliked about it. It just wasn't anything particularly entertaining. It was fine to watch once for me.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the main thing that I love it for, obviously, is the whole point of it is the baseball, because I loved learning about Japanese baseball. Like, I didn't know, at least in this film, that a baseball game could end in a tie. Which Tom Selleck's reaction to that, 100% valid. That is the right reaction to, that's the equivalent of there's no
sports in the tie.
Yeah, that's the equivalent of no crying in baseball. There's no ties in baseball. Like I love that, but I enjoyed the baseball aesthetics of it, and it's like I said, I enjoy these kinds of films as long as you can kind of like the characters. And Tom Selleck's character is an asshole, but he's a likable asshole. I usually kind of chalk him up to an 80s George Clooney, but not nearly as good an actor.
He's very much that same style of character actor. Yeah.
Yeah, Clooney tried his sports film, and Leatherheads was not a good film. That's another one's got a great cast that had no reason to suck, and it was just dull as shit. But yeah, Mr. Baseball, I wasn't expecting you to love it. I'm taking it was fine as like a yes.
It won't show up in my 5 worst picks of Sean at the end of the year. It won't.
No, it won't, and it shouldn't, because Mr. Baseball it isn't a bad film. It's just a very of its time in terms of the jokes and stereotypes and stuff like that. But it's still a fun baseball film. And if you guys have never seen it and you want to see Tom Selleck, which most people I think know Tom Selleck from Friends now or Blue Bloods, I think that's where the gist of people will go, Tom Selleck. And if you want to see him in a baseball film, it's definitely worth checking out. I wouldn't say you need to go out of your way to pay for it, but if it's free somewhere, which is it?
Nope, not right.
It's not right now. I wouldn't say it's worth going and spend a $3 rental or anything. But if it ever pops up on a Netflix or HBO Max or anything like that, then yeah, definitely check it out. It's a decent baseball film. It's not going to be up there with the ranks of Field of Dreams and Bull Durham and Major League, but it's definitely in that next tier below it as a decent baseball film. Going on next, our stinker film. We both said this last week. We didn't want to watch this movie. We really, 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 really didn't want to watch this movie. Probably me more so than Brian. But yes, this is a film that neither one of us had seen, because why the F would we watch this? I despise the lead actor in this film. So I tried at all costs to not watch anything he's in. I don't know why I despise him so much. I just don't like him.
To be fair, though, despite what the poster would tell you, he turned out to not even be the lead
Oh,
actor.
it's completely misleading. We'll get to that, obviously, but we are talking about the kids' film, Beverly Hills Chihuahua. Beverly Hills Chihuahua came out October 3rd, 2008, had a budget of $20 million, had a weekend opening, $29.3 million. Number one its opening weekend, spent 2 weeks at number one. Shame on all of you. Had a finished box office of 149 million, 149.29 million, 94.51 million domestic, and 54.77 million international. Prior to watching the film, I did not want to watch this, mainly because George Lopez. I don't find him funny. I've never found him funny. I find him ungodly annoying. I would have much rather had this been a fat bulldog or a fat pug and had Fluffy do the voice. That, to me, would have been a lot more fun. Instead, we get George, or even Carlos Mencia at the time. I know he's a douche and he stole people's jokes, but I would have preferred him over George Lopez. I've just never liked George Lopez. I couldn't tell you why. I just don't. But that's all I knew about, was that he was the Beverly Hills Chihuahua. He's not though. I don't think he is anyway. Technically, he's not the Beverly Hills Chihuahua. Instead, it's Drew Barrymore. Was not expecting that. And in fact, George Lopez is maybe only in like 30% of the film. And it's basically all around Drew Barrymore's female Chihuahua. I think he's in it more in the sequels, because there's 2 sequels to this. But yeah, Brian, Beverly Hills Chihuahua.
Yeah. The plus side is we don't have to pay for this. This is, I think, the only movie that's free.
Yeah, it's on HBO Max.
It's on Disney Plus.
Oh, I thought it was on Max.
No, it's Disney.
Okay.
Shame on you, Disney.
No, this is right up Disney's alley.
So I completely avoided this movie as well, because talking animal movies can be good, rare occasions, but this one is just like the lowest common denominator of talking animal movies, with all this like the really infantile jokes and things that I'm sure kids got a kick out of it, and good for them. But as an adult trying to watch this movie, it was really quite a painful experience. A voice cast who is all fine for the roles, I suppose. I don't blame the voice cast for the stupid writing, the stupid jokes throughout the whole movie.
I don't really necessarily blame any of the cast. I don't think anyone really is doing a bad job.
No, I mean they're doing. I mean, Drew's doing her thing. Andy Garcia's doing his thing. You know, they're all fine.
Even the live action cast, you got Piper Perabo.
That's a live action cast. Piper Perabo. We both saw her like, oh, I didn't even realize she was in this. We like her. This will be good. But unfortunately, she's really barely in it. And when she is, she's kind of just acting goofy, and it's like she, whatever.
And that's Jamie Lee Curtis.
But Jamie Lee Curtis is in there just going way over the top, things like that.
Yeah, she's
cast wise, I don't blame anybody. It's maybe they want to do something their kids can watch. Maybe they're in for the paycheck, whatever. So they did, but as far as a viewer, it's not a good movie. The jokes, like I said, are just easy and obvious. The story you don't care about. I'm literally struggling to remember things specifically in the movie, because that's how forgettable it was. It just
there was one point in the film, I think it was the second act, where we were just like, oh my god, there's still a whole other hour left of this movie, and we both basically like started talking, and then you're like, you know what, we're not watching this, let's mute this and let's just talk. And then all of a sudden, like,
what were we talking about? We passed the time by talking about something completely different.
We were talking about a movie. We're talking about Dear Evan Hansen.
Oh, were we? Okay.
We
passed half the time. But I mean, we were still, had the subtitles on, so we're still paying attention to the movie. But also, we're like, wait, now they're at some temple, and there's like a million chihuahuas there.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
And it was
what
only at that
happened?
moment that I looked up, made the connection, like, oh, because Chihuahuas are named after the region in Mexico is called Chihuahua. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, I'm like, wait, what's going on? And Brian's like, do you really care? I'm like, I mean,
Exactly.
no, but if it's vital to the story, like, why do you care? I'm like,
Well, and then there's like
okay,
the
Brian.
big villain Doberman dog, whatever it is, and at the end it gets like tackled and just lays there and goes like, "Okay, you win because you knocked me down once," and then next thing you know, he's just like gone.
Yeah, he like runs off. He's like, I must hunt him back down. It's like, you let him go. But like the one thing that I think was really bugging Brian was that so Drew Barrymore's Chihuahua, which what the hell is her name? Chloe. She gets kidnapped at one point, and she gets put in a dog fighting ring. First off, it's a freaking Chihuahua. Why would you put a Chihuahua in a dog fight?
Unless you just want to see carnage, like you have a big dog and you
Exactly.
want to see a little one get ripped up, maybe.
Especially up
But,
against like, isn't El Diablo a Doberman?
I believe so. Yeah.
Doberman, right?
Yeah.
What?
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay. Which that's not a fair fight. That's like putting Spud Webb against Shaq and expecting to give Spud Webb a fighting chance. But the whole thing is that she escapes and stuff, and then like the guy who runs the dog fighting ring wants her because she has a diamond leash, and he realizes, oh, that's a lot of money. Let's go get her. And the whole thing that was bugging Brian is like, why didn't you just take the damn leash off the dog?
You caught her in the first place. You saw this diamond collar she had on.
Yeah.
And then you put her in the fighting ring and do her thing. And then she gets away and like, oh, she has that diamond collar. I'm like, if that's what you wanted, you could have taken it.
He's like, oh, she's probably worth a lot of money. Then why'd you put her in a dog fighting thing? Because
Exactly.
she would have died.
It's not like she suddenly whipped out the collar that she didn't have it originally. It was there the whole time. When you caught her, it was there.
So she gets saved by this other dog, and I guess the subplot it maybe could have been while we weren't listening, where like he lost his sense of smell because he used to be like a dog cop. This is Andy Garcia's like El
Delgado.
Yeah, Delgado. So like it's one of those things where you have like the rough and tumble like old dog and like the prissy little prima donna dog. And they go on little adventures here and there. And I was telling this to Brian, I was like, it's not that the dogs' mouths are bad, but they're not even nearly as like it's no Homeward Bound: The Incredible Journey. Which in Homeward Bound, the dogs' mouths didn't move. It was just all like them talking mindset, which is like I was totally fine with that. Like you don't have to have the talking dog moves because it's like people are looking at them. Like, do they not notice the dogs' mouths are all this kind of crap.
I mean, I was fine with the way they did it in the Homeward Bound movies, and I'm fine with if they're going to move mouths. I mean, I like Babe was a good movie, and that had the talking animals, things like that. But here, it wasn't so much about the fact that their mouths moving; it was just the fact that it wasn't funny.
It wasn't funny, and like because like she's obviously Chloe's playing like this. She's a rich girl. She's like a Paris Hilton dog, and so she has like dog like. Play dates with other dogs. And like, one of the dogs has to be gay because.
And which one was that?
The fucking pug. How
Sean
dare
had
you?
such a problem with the pug.
Look, I don't care if a dog is gay because let's face it, they all sniff each other's butts and they all hump each other. It doesn't really matter. But they had to do like the like almost like the oh god, what's the actor's name? The comedian Billy Eichner.
Okay, yeah.
Like just being like. Oh my god! It's just like, oh come on! Like, why did it have to be the pug? I was like, couldn't they give the pug like a? Why did it have to be a stereotypical like character? Like it was a slap in the face because like the pugs have been like defenders of the universe and like Men in Black and stuff, and yet here he is. He's just like, oh my god, I'm totally gonna like lose this, and I was like, I had 3 pugs. They're amazing, amazing dogs.
And Sean is personally offended by this portrayal of pugs.
You don't badmouth pugs, dude. We're friends. Don't badmouth pugs. But anyway, it's just you have this weird prima donna thing where it's just like, oh my god, I have to change into like my 3rd outfit of the day, and it's like.
Oh yeah, like supposedly Piper Perabo, who's essentially dog sitting for her. Is it her aunt? I think that was.
Yeah, it's like Jamie Lee Curtis is her aunt, and like she doesn't like the dog either.
Apparently, she's taking the time. She doesn't want to be doing this at all, but apparently, she's taking the time to change all 3 dogs into like the little bikinis, and it's like
and it's like, once again, they're dogs. Like I get it. It's the joke. We get it. But it's also just like it's not like Jamie Curtis is like watching you.
Right.
You don't have to do that. Like I'm not saying don't take care of the dog. I'm saying like you don't have to put it in 3 different clothes throughout the day. Like,
Also, if dogs were in a bikini, you'd have to cover the 6 nipples, wouldn't you?
which even then it wasn't. But it's the whole story is just kind of it's a kid's film. We get it. It's a kid's film. But it was the worst film that came out this weekend. We literally looked at any other options, and this is what we were stuck with. And we're just
but
like
the one redeeming factor for you though was learning that George Lopez was not the main character.
yes, because we were watching it.
Despite him being on the poster.
It was that and Drew Barrymore because I didn't pay attention to the cast because I was just like, I don't care. I think I paid attention when I saw Piper Perabo and I saw Jamie Lee Curtis. I was like, they're in this movie? And I think we were like 30 minutes into the film. And I go, is that Drew Barrymore? You're like, yeah. I was like, I didn't know. But like, I heard the voice, like, that voice is killing me. And I was like, that's Drew Barrymore. Damn, she must have got a big paycheck to do this.
I was like, you didn't know that half an hour ago? Okay.
No, because I wasn't looking at the cast. I wasn't paying attention. It wasn't until like she like escaped the dog fighting ring and she was actually giving like legit dialogue that I was like, oh, I hear her now. Mm-hmm. But like, and I didn't know like Andy Garcia. Like, I didn't pay attention to any of the voice cast. I just knew that George Lopez was basically the Taco Bell dog that like is pining over Chloe, and that's all I knew. And like, and he's barely in the film because we were about halfway through the movie. I'm like, you know what, like. This is not a good film, but it's definitely better than I initially thought it was going to be because George Lopez is not in this as much as I thought. And then you see the end of the film, you're like, oh, so it's the sequels. Because the sequels, they have puppies, and he's a lot more focal point. I'm like, okay, we're never going to watch these sequels. Because
and most of the actual names didn't return for the sequels. I think it was basically him and nobodies.
and I will say this, and this is going to sound like defending him, and I'm not. George Lopez wasn't that bad because he wasn't in the movie that long. But even his dialogue, it wasn't the worst. It wasn't the beginning. Second half, it wasn't necessarily that bad. And then you also have like, was it the iguana and the rat? And like they kept trying to steal the necklace. And I kept telling you, I was like, what benefits them for stealing the necklace? Like, money has no option to them. What are they going to trade it for? Food? They're just going to give a guy a diamond necklace for like a block of cheese. Like that's a horrible trade.
No, the guy will take the diamond necklace that the rat brought up to him and he'll smash the rat.
Exactly. And Brian's like, it's a kid's movie. It's like, no, I legitimately want to know.
I need to know.
Like why the rat is so focused on stealing this diamond necklace for what? He doesn't know how money works. He doesn't know how the transfer works. Like it was driving me insane. And Brian's just like, it's a kid's. I don't care. This needs to be explained. But in a nutshell, that's Beverly Hills Chihuahua. It's not like it's bad, but it's a kid's movie. It's not as bad as we thought it was gonna be, but it still was bad. And if I learned one thing, I did not know that Chihuahua was a place. Because there's a
named after it. Yeah.
You pause the movie because the police car said Chihuahua. And you're like, are you fucking kidding me? Do they really have Chihuahua on the cop car? We paused it.
I literally did. Oh, I felt so stupid afterwards. I'm like, why would they put Chihuahua on the cop car? And they looked it up and was like, oh yeah, because that's like the name of this. I think
like Brian was about
states
to
or regions or
whatever they call it. Shit over this, and then he was like that's. He's like, okay, it's fine now.
I don't know Mexican geography.
Yeah. And I was like, you're like, what did you say? You asked me like where they were. I was like, don't ask me geography questions. I don't like it when you ask me geography questions. Like, because then I feel stupid. But anyway, Beverly Hills Chihuahua, we don't recommend it. If you have kids, they'll probably like it, and then you'll probably just.
There are better things you can show your kids. Just saying.
Yeah, there are way better things to show your kids. If you have to show them this, have your phone or tablet handy, and do other things because it's not enjoyable for adults. But it's on. I could have sworn it was on HBO Max, but it's apparently on Disney Plus. So yes, moving on to Brian's pick. Now we're in the horror aspect of the show. If I could turn the lights down for a horror aspect, I would totally do that. But if I turn the lights off, you won't see me. But we are in the horror aspect now. This is Brian's pick. This is a movie that I didn't know existed. I probably have heard it through the grapevine, but I never connected the dots. But this is a vampire film that came out in 1987. We are talking about Catherine Bigelow's Near Dark. Near Dark came out October 2nd, 1987, had a budget of $5 million, had a weekend opening of 635,789. It was number 13 on its opening weekend and had a finished box office of $3.36 million. Brian, this is your movie. You chose this. Why is that?
So Near Dark is essentially a vampire movie. I don't think they ever use the word vampire in the movie.
They never use the term vampire.
But they're clearly vampires. But it's a vampire movie, came out in 1987, overshadowed, of course, by The Lost Boys, which was a much bigger budget, more marketed, got that, the kind of teen factor to it. So much more successful vampire movie. This is very much one of those like 80s, like low budget indie kind of, not completely independent, but really low budget movie. Essentially, Catherine Bigelow, this is essentially, I want to say, one of her first two films. Obviously she went on to win an Oscar for Hurt Locker, and she did Point Break and other things like this, but this is one of her first films where she essentially, I think, went around the set of Aliens and said, hey, you want to be in my movie too? Because you got Bill Paxton in it, you got Lance Henriksen in it, you got Jeanette Goldstein, who you might know as Vasquez from Aliens, and she's been in a bunch of other James Cameron things as well. Tim Thomerson, who was in a lot of those 80s kind of straight to video kind of doll man, a lot of like low budget horror comedy kind of things. You got appearance by Teresa Randall, who you might know from the Bad Boys movies as Marcus's wife. She's got a brief cameo. James LaGrosse is in there.
Oh, is she the girl in the car? Or in the
She's
truck?
one of the two girls in the van, in the truck, yeah. And then Adrian Pasdar is kind of the main character of the movie, who he hasn't done a whole lot of movies. He's popped up and stuff, but most
everyone knows him from Heroes.
From Heroes. Before that, I remember him in a show called Prophet that he was in. It's kind of the first place I remember seeing him. So essentially, the movie is about this guy played by Adrian Pasdar, who meets this woman, this girl outside a bar, essentially one night, and she basically turns him into a vampire. And so he's starting to turn. He's the sun comes up and he's starting to turn, and so the vampire clan, whatever you want to call them, they come by in their little blocked out windows van and pick him up, and they basically bring him into their group. And so he's traveling around with them. Of course, he's reluctant. He doesn't want to kill people. He doesn't want to suck people's blood, things like that. But these people are just feeders. They'll kill everybody and do whatever they have to do. That's the plot of the movie, essentially. I think it's kind of got this cult following to it. I think largely because of the kind of the cast, but also kind of that 80s, in indie grunge to it. So it's not like a big glossy movie. It's a very gritty, dark. It is, and it's a very slow burn kind of movie too. I mean, not a lot happens in this movie plot. There aren't a lot of action scenes, and even when there is like some kind of action or some kind, it's even those scenes seem kind of very kind of slow and methodical, like in that bar scene where it's like some of the best carnage. Even that scene kind of goes very slowly and methodically for the
It's kind of like a Tarantino-esque slow burn where it's like something's gonna go down, but they want to simmer in it for like a little while before they go.
And part of that might have been budget limitations, because they're like, hey, they got to do a lot of dialogue because they don't have a lot of money to put into the blood and gore and things in this movie. But part of it, I think, is just because you have a cast of people who it's fun to hear talk. Bill Paxton is in full Bill Paxton mode. If you didn't like him in Aliens or True Lies, some of these things, you're not going to like him in this. If you like that version of Bill Paxton, where he's just constantly talking and quipping that's him here, except with a little bit more of a dark streak to him, and literally a dark side to him.
He's younger in this, so this is him kind of being like the badass, like teenage college kid, kind of character. He's basically Kiefer Sutherland, but not the leader in this.
Yeah, but I'll stop for a minute. This is your first time seeing it. What did you think of it?
I remember I was talking to you about this the other night because we had a little discussion about this prior, which this is basically going to be that same discussion. But it was one of those things where I was like, there's not really a plot to this movie.
Not really. It's this guy got turned into a vampire and he doesn't want to be, and that's your plot.
There was like I got four things about this film. One is there's not really a whole lot going on in this film. Guy tries to hook up with girl, guy gets turned into vampire, guy gets thrown into vampire family, guy tries to escape. that's the film. There's not really an overarching story. There's not really a whole lot of side characters outside of like the guy's dad and
his dad and sister are looking for him. Yeah.
Like that's basically it. Also, Adrian Pasdar, who plays Caleb, in any other film, he's the guy that gets killed in the first act, and everyone's like, yeah, kill that jackass, kill that asshole, because he's basically forcing himself on May, played by Jenny Wright, the entire time. And it's like, it's 1987. Like, you can get away with that shit in 1987. By today's standards, like, dude, you asked for it. Like, you are like consistently
in today's standards. Any character who does that, like, he's gonna die.
Oh yeah, he's gonna die. He's gonna die brutally.
Yeah.
As well, like he's gonna get his comeuppance.
They're probably cutting off his dick. Yeah.
He's gonna get his dick cut off, or he's gonna get ripped to shreds, or something like that. He's like, well, he was basically kind of being rapey, so that's why. In this one, he's the hero. Like he literally from the first scene. He gets out of his truck and he basically almost gets into a fight with his buddy, which that was weird. And then he sees May and he's like, oh my God, this amazing, beautiful girl, which also she's eating ice cream, which doesn't make a lot of sense because technically they're vampires and she can't eat ice cream. But little just didn't line up. But anyway, and he's basically like, oh, let me drive you home. And he's like consistently trying to force himself. Like he's not going to the full part where he's like, I'm on top of you trying to rip your clothes off. But he's basically giving off that like, okay, dude.
No, you don't need to leave. You stay here with me.
Yeah. Or you need to take me home. Turn off the car. I'll take you home when you kiss me. And it's like, oh my God. It's like, this guy's going to die. And it's like, no, he's the hero. It's like, okay. But it's, once he turns, it's like, all of a sudden he's like, okay, like, I'm a good guy now. And it's like, no, you're still kind of a douche. But we're supposed to like him as a character. And I don't think there's ever really a moment, except for like when he's with his family, like his little sister. It's like, okay, I see the good guy there, but he's still kind of a creep. But it's supposed to be romantic, I guess, by 80s standards. It is like between him and May, like a kind of like a Twilight thing, but without.
Okay, I'm gonna stop there for 1 second.
Yeah.
Okay, and you can bring up the graphics right here.
Okay.
But because there's the original marketing for this movie, which some of them have just Bill Paxton, some of them have like the three main vampires, and they're all grungy and bloody, and in one case, in one of them, Bill Paxton's like all burnt up because the sun hit him and stuff like that. And it's all the original marketing of this movie. And then there's when they put out the Blu-ray, and you'll find the same cover if you look for it on like Vudu and that, which they totally twilighted the hell out of it to try and market it and get those people. Hey, you like vampires? Totally. Come see our vampire movie.
Totally. They give Pasdar the gray skin tone with the blue moonlight.
He looks like Robert Pattinson on that.
He does. And like there's parts in the film where May's like, look at the stars, be the night with me and stuff. And you're like, she's trying, and he's all like, I just want to get some. And he never gets any. Like he never gets it. He's like, was it worth it? It's almost like it's like Out Cold when oh God, what's his name? When Zach Galifianakis puts his penis in the jacuzzi and he pulls him out. He's like, was it worth it? It's like, was it worth it, Adrian? You got turned into a vampire.
But that Twilight marketing just bugged the hell out of me, because it's like, even if you manage to trick some of that audience into coming to see, here's another vampire movie with a love story, they're not going to like this movie. No, so it's like, why not?
Like it's total misrepresentation.
This is blood, gore,
Oh yeah, most of the budget of this film is to the gore and explosions.
Yeah,
and then third piece is apparently, according to this film, if you turn into a vampire, first off, all you gotta do is get bit once. You not even get drained. You just gotta get bit like a zombie. You're turning into a vampire. But you can cure being a vampire by getting a blood transfusion.
Oh, spoilers.
What?
Yeah, I was gonna mention that. There's basically a scene where his dad wants to turn him back to human again.
Farmer.
So he gives him a transfusion in his barn. So not exactly the most sterile environments. But also, it's like, the transfusion involves replacing all their blood. So that means either the dad has no blood at all and he's dead,
or the
Or the
blood
dad
from
has all
the
the vampire
son,
blood, and he's a vampire.
and he's a vampire now. And it's like that the logic doesn't make sense there. But apparently in this film, blood transfusion, you vampire no more. And then the fourth thing is, and I know I'm beating a dead horse because I bring this up all the time on many other films. The kid actor is not good in this film. It is. I don't want to necessarily. I don't want to necessarily blame him. I think he's given some really shitty dialogue, and he's trying his best to act it, but it is cringy. There is cringy dialogue throughout the film, but you have people like Lance and Paxton and even Adrian that can make it work because it's who they are. This kid is not that good of an actor. So when he has some of this dialogue, it's like, oh, dude, stop talking. Please stop talking.
I like the concept of the character because the whole thing is like, once you turn a vampire, you stop aging. Like Lance Henriksen, they ask him how old he is. He goes, let's just say I fought for the South, so that kind of implying Civil War, obviously. And so this kid, his name's Homer. Basically what his big thing is like, oh, I'm this adult, but I'm caught in this child's body. And
he wants to get laid. He wants to get laid.
Yeah, he's arguing with Bill Paxton at one point. He's like, you don't know what it's like. I'm stuck in this kid's body, and it's like, I get that that's a character arc you could explore. I mean, Interview with a Vampire had basically the same thing with Kirsten Dunst, Claudia, where she was like, I'm stuck in this child's body. I never get to grow up. But then in her case, where she's like, she ends up biting that one woman because she wants to have a mother. She's like, I want her to be mine. She turn to a vampire. She can be my mother. In this case, the kid like brings home a little girl who turns out to be Caleb's sister, and says, I want to turn her. I want her for me. And it's like, physically you look the same age, but essentially you're being a big pedophile right now because you're an adult.
Probably like a 60-year-old dude in a 10-year-old's body, and you basically want to hook up with a 10-year-old girl.
Yeah,
like this is creepy. Like this is not, once again, it's 1987, guys. This shit can happen. Which that storyline probably would play in a movie right now, but obviously it'd be like, oh, that's so wrong. And it's like, yeah, it's kind of creepy. It's a weird, like, because like as it's happening, like it's one of those things like, oh no, wait, ooh, how far are we gonna go to?
Luckily, it gets there because Caleb's like, hey, that's my sister.
It doesn't last longer than like 2 minutes tops.
Yeah.
But because luckily, Caleb sees his sister, and then it becomes like that's the introduction to the third act, him trying to escape.
Yeah.
But it's just like you're like, ooh, I'm starting to feel dirty and not like good about what this is leading towards. But it's a decent film. It's one of those, and I kept telling Brian, it's one of those movies you have to keep watching and you go, it's 1987. It's 1987. It's 1987. This shit was fine in 1987. It's not gonna fly today. A lot of this is not gonna fly. But and then the inevitable third act, or the final battle, as it is I would say the Bill Paxton stuff is good, but then it's like after the Paxton stuff, it's like, really, you've been a vampire since the Civil War, and that's the thought process. And then like the kid, and I obviously we're spoiling it, but like the boy basically kills himself chasing after the 10-year-old girl that he wants to have sex with until he explodes,
runs into the sun. Like,
learned
how not to do that over the past however many hundred years.
Not that I'm trying to defend this, but it's like, dude, you can find another girl. You don't have to have this one. She spoke a sentence to you in a hotel like hallway, like she's not like the
Guess
one.
what? Wait till tomorrow. Some other family will check in.
Exactly. And he literally kills himself over it. It's like, that's just idiotic as a character. And then even Lance Hendrickson and Jeanette Goldstein, they just like, let's just drive into the sun and die. And it's like, you could get away. Like he just kind of gave up. Like at least Paxton went out like a champ. Like Paxton's like, if I'm going out, I'm going out. And the other ones are just like, oh well. And it's like, this doesn't compete with the rest of the film that we've been watching the whole time. But yeah, it's a weird vampire film. It's not a bad one. It's not
It
bad.
is. Well, it's a movie that
It's just
I'll say
weird.
that it was never a movie that I loved. It's one of those kind of movies that I liked at the time and I wanted to revisit it myself, so I picked it for this week, and I still like it. I don't love it. It's kind of thing if you're into kind of that '80s low budget horror vibe,
Yeah.
you'll enjoy this.
Which
If
a
you're
lot of people
looking,
are, which is why we're talking about it
yeah.
now, because this is the time of the year where people will go and try to find these old school
You want to
gems.
watch just kind of these old horror movies like this, and
Yeah.
and it's also fun to see a lot of like Bill Paxton, especially Lance Henriksen, a lot of these James Cameron alumnus that they're just fun to see, kind of their earlier films.
Yeah. Near Dark on anything?
It's not on anything. Technically, you can watch it on Vudu if you own it, but you can't. It's not even able to rent anywhere. So,
Yeah. I mean, if you have like the DVD or the
or
Blu-ray,
you know
of it,
what? Watch your cable listings this month. It's probably going to pop up.
yeah,
Somewhere.
I guarantee you, Near Dark will pop up
Yeah.
somewhere, like AMC or something like
Yeah.
that. All right. So going to our featured film, obviously we had to talk about this movie. It's probably one of the better zombie films of the 2000s. Spawned a sequel, spawned a new beloved thing for the Twinkie. Of course, we were talking about Zombieland. Zombieland came out October 1st, 2009, had a budget of $23.6 million, had a weekend opening of $24.73 million. Number one, its opening weekend, its only week at the number one spot, and it had a finished box office of $102.39 million, $75.59 million domestic, and $26.8 million international. It did not make more money than Beverly Hills Chihuahua, and that makes me sad.
Not even opening weekend.
Beverly Hills Chihuahua made more money opening weekend and more money total than this film, and that is a travesty. Anyway, Zombieland. I think for the most part, Zombieland is beloved by pretty much everybody, unless you want to be a troll. I don't think there's anyone out there who actively hates Zombieland unless they just want to be a troll about it. This was a film that just kind of showed up and just took everyone out. No one was prepared for this.
And we're the kind of people that are aware of movies that are coming out and things like this.
Oh yeah.
But then when the trailer showed up, I'm like, whoa, what's this?
And then it was came out right away. We're like, okay, let's check it out, because you have Emma Stone, who still isn't super big yet. I mean, you have Superbad, and this was we just talked about Easy A. Was this before or after Easy A?
It was the year before Easy A.
Yeah, so she really only had Superbad, and The Rocker. So she was still kind of a nobody. And of course, you got Woody Harrelson, and then you got Eisenberg, and
this is a year before Social Network.
Exactly, and then you have Abigail Breslin, who I guess technically is the bigger name because of Little Miss Sunshine, but and then you just have a straight up zombie film, and it's like, okay, we've had zombie comedies with Shaun of the Dead. But this one looks more like a action comedy kind of thing, because you have the rules, which that is the biggest thing about Zombieland. It's the rules. I think if you ask anyone, what are the rules of Zombieland? Obviously, you're not going to know the whole list, because I don't think they ever released the whole list. But it's like the Wedding Crashers with the rules. Everyone has a favorite. It's either double tap, cardio, always check the back seat. Enjoy the little things. You have all these little jokes, but I think watching this the first time, I went into it really hesitant, because outside of Woody Harrelson, I wasn't necessarily crazy about the cast at the time, because Emma Stone wasn't really anything big yet. Once we get through the opening number,
the opening credits alone.
That's what I mean. The opening credits.
Yeah.
That's where you're like, oh, this is gonna be good.
Yeah.
Which, granted, we've proven that having kick-ass opening credits doesn't equal a good movie. Army of the Dead.
Army of the Dead. Yes.
But Zombieland, though, it's so good. The opening credits, the way they run through the credit font, it's part of it, and you have the girl with the slushie, and you have the stripper chasing the guy, and all this other stuff.
Slow-mo.
It all slow-mo while playing Metallica. It is a great opening number.
Yeah.
And of course, we start with Eisenberg, and of course, it's Jesse Eisenberg. You either like him or you don't like him. We're kind of depends on the film. I think we like him more than we dislike him. I think we give Eisenberg a hard time because of Lex Luthor. But then we watch like stuff like Social Network and like American Ultra, and it's like, you know, we really, I think we like Jesse Eisenberg. We just really can't get past Lex Luthor with them. But we get this character and we get, you know, this world, because he's basically our narrator of the story. And then we get Woody Harrelson. Woody Harrelson's Tallahassee, hands down, probably one of my favorite zombie film characters ever. I love Tallahassee so damn much. His jokes, his one-liners. Probably one of my favorite ones is when they go to Bill Murray's house, and Abigail Breslin's like, "Who's Bill Murray?" He's like, "You know what? I've never hit a kid, but but you're pushing it." And I love his character so much. And then they have that character arc in the middle of the film. The real reason
we're talking about his dog.
Yeah, his dog, and it makes his character come full circle. And it makes him more than just a one-note joke character, you know, who really, really wants a Twinkie. You get a full circle of his character. You know, Emma Stone looks fantastic in the film. Who knew dark eyeshadow really makes Emma Stone pop in this film? But she's awesome. Obviously, Eisenberg is funny with his Eisenberg-esque-ness, especially with Woody Harrelson. They gel perfectly. And Breslin's just kind of there. I've never been really crazy about Abigail Breslin.
Yeah.
But you got Zombie Kill of the Week, which is funny. I mean, you could have your own spin-off show, literally about zombie kills of the week. I love this film so much. What are your thoughts on Zombieland?
So yeah, Zombieland, like you said, kind of came out of nowhere, and from the opening credits, I was like, I'm gonna love this movie, and I did. It lived up to my expectations because it's great comedy throughout. I think even if you just look at it as a straight zombie movie, it's a great zombie movie, even if you weren't talking about the comedy of it. I think that the style of it, it's a very stylized thing. It's almost like a glossier version of what Shaun of the Dead did. You know, it kind of kind of quick cuts and things like that, especially like whenever you introduce a rule or it kind of shows a flashback to things. It kind of has a Shaun of the Dead feel to it, but it's definitely kind of a different, you know, it's almost like an Americanized version of it. I really like the way to do that, how they have the text, like you said, on screen, things like that. I think that part of what makes it work is definitely the characters, because Eisenberg's, you know, neurotic, you know, kind of wimpy guy against this, you know, definitely type A character of, you know, Woody Harrelson. I think that their conflict in their type of characters, I think, just works perfectly. It's you know, comedy gold right there. That's just, you know, perfectly made for it. But yeah, it's the kind of movie that I really didn't have expectations at all going into it. I loved it. The sequel I liked a lot, although it really kind of felt like largely more of the same, but I still enjoyed the hell out of it. Plus, you add Zoe Deutsch, which is awesome.
You add Zoe Deutsch in it, and we all know how much you and I love Zoe Deutsch. But here's the thing: like, I've watched Zombieland probably over 10 times. I have not seen Double Tap, I think, since theaters.
I just watched it for, well, the first time, and I don't know if it's only the second time, but definitely the first time in a couple of years, just this past week after I watched this one. And I really do enjoy it. It's just the first one's still the better one.
Oh yeah, I've never had the urge to go back and watch the sequel. It's like, it's fine, but it's not the first one. The first one's special. The first one is very special.
But they had Zoe and they had Rosario Dawson. On the negative side, you get kind of more of Abigail Breslin, and she's not turned into a good adult actress.
Yeah, so. I think to me that's what hurts the sequel, is that they give Abigail Breslin too much storyline.
Yeah.
And Emma Stone, clearly, she's become so big at this point. I feel like her character is kind of toned down.
She honestly was in it more than I expected. I was sure she was going to show up at the beginning, disappear. That was like basically a cameo. Like, I'm too big for this, but okay, I'll show up because, you know, you guys kind of
it's one of those things where it's like, without them, because they did the same thing that I said they shouldn't do with oh crap, what was it, Jumanji? Where it's like, you don't separate the squad. And that's what they did, is they separated the squad.
Mm-hmm.
You separated Breslin from her sister, and then she left, and then you add a new character, which Zoe was good, but then you keep the squad separate. Like, the whole reason why Zombieland works is because all four of them together are great. And when you just break them off and have them go do their own things, you start to see the weaknesses in the armor, because Yeah.
So many sequels make that mistake; they break them apart, and I think a lot of that comes to the fact that okay, we want to do a second Zombieland movie. These stars have all gotten way bigger since we cast them. We can't get them all here at the same time for a long time. So okay, we'll film you right now. Okay, you have to go do your thing. Now we'll film your stuff right now. And it's like,
Quiet Place Part 2. That's what I was talking about, where they broke
yeah,
up the family. I was like, that's the one thing you shouldn't have done.
yeah.
Um,
But back to this movie though.
yeah.
I mean, honestly, beginning to end, I love this movie. The Bill Murray thing, which is it's a surprise, but this movie's what 12 years old by now, so I'm
I
not
mean,
spoiling
the
anything.
Bill Murray thing is great. I still would have loved to have seen what they originally had planned, because what they originally had planned before the Bill Murray thing would have been amazing. But clearly they couldn't do it, so they went with Bill Murray instead, and it still works to perfection. And if you guys didn't know the original thing, it had to do with Patrick Swayze, but he got sick, and that would have been awesome. But I don't think it would have been funny, but it would have been funny actiony and not funny like Bill Murray. But and then of course the third act at the is it Family Funland, Pacific Funland,
Pacific Playland.
Pacific Playland. I love that we had a zombie like whole action sequence at a roller coaster park. It had there's so many fun things to do, and there's like just so many awesome set pieces. And hands down, probably one of my favorite lines of the movie by Eisenberg is when he first starts talking to Emma Stone. He's like, "Uh-oh, someone's about to have their hair brushed over their ear." It's such a great line, and the way that he built it up earlier in the film, and it's such a great line. Zombieland is just a fun film. We would recommend it, but let's face it, if you're a horror fan, you've seen Zombieland. If you haven't seen it lately, you should really check it out again.
Not free anywhere, but again, you can rent it, or I'm sure it'll show up somewhere.
Oh, it'll be on TV. It'll be on like Comedy Central or TBS, TNT.
And actually, we're recording this on September 30th, October 1st. I bet it'll pop up on one of the streaming services for the month. So
probably. But yeah, that is our show. Kind of a shorter show. We're having to deal with some time constraints now that we haven't had to deal with before. That's also a reason why we're coming out with these later the last 2 weeks, because of work and stuff. But yes, we hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you guys did, go and hit that like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you guys stay up to date with all the latest videos that pop up on the Movie Crusaders. Of course, don't forget to follow us on all the social media outlets you see below. Obviously, you see some new graphics. I'm testing some things. Hopefully, you guys
Sean gets bored.
What's that?
Sean gets bored.
It's not that I get bored. It's just that I feel like we can make things look better. And I try things because Brian won't help me. And so I just go, this is the perfect. This is how our relationship is. It's like and I hate saying this, I'm the wife who cleans and like puts on this fantastic dinner, gets my hair done and everything, and I'm expecting Brian to notice. And I send it to him, going, "What do you think?" You're like, what did you just show me? I go, this,
like,
all of this.
What's different? I don't see the difference.
And you're like, oh, yeah, that's cool. I like it. I'm like, I've been working on this for 3 hours.
Please don't ever talk about you being my wife again.
Yeah, and I'm just like, it's so frustrating. But that's why we work together. But yes, I hope you guys enjoyed the new look. Like I said, as we grow as putting shows together, we're going to try new things. I hope you guys like the new look. Let us know if you did. Coming up next, obviously this show's not coming out at midnight in like an hour and a half because YouTube won't let me edit it. But that also means that reviews for Netflix's The Guilty and Venom 2 Let There Be Carnage are already out. So check out those reviews. Brian, I know you're not going to do the review for me, so give me a quick Venom, because I know you haven't seen The Guilty yet. Quick Venom.
First Venom by director Ruben Fleischer. Not a big fan of it. This Venom, just as if not slightly worse, in my opinion. Did not really care for it. I'll just leave it at that. I'm not going into details.
Yeah, and if you guys want to know my opinion, watch the Venom review that's out right now. Coming up next week, it's James Bond. Nothing's going against James Bond. It's No Time to Die. It's Daniel Craig's final film. Clearly, I'm going to have a review. Maybe Brian might want to come on and do it with me. Maybe. We'll see.
If I'm around.
See. But No Time to Die. See, guys, this is what I'm talking about. This is what I'm talking about. I'm trying to bring him into our world. He's like, no. Anyway, No Time to Die. We'll definitely have a review for that. And then, of course, we will have our episode next week with 5 new movies. We have an action film from the 90s that is, I think, beloved by pretty much everybody. I love this film. It's one of my favorite 90s action films. Brian clearly loves it as well. We have is it a horror action film?
It's a horror action. It's a new take on an old character that I think gets unfairly trashed. I think it's actually a decent movie.
I've actually never seen it, so this will be a first-time watch for me. We have, hands down, one of the worst films, which I say that now, but then I gotta realize we watched a lot of horrible films this year. Before we started the show, this was in my top 3 of worst films I've ever seen, and we're going to rewatch it. And this is one of the only movies that I actually ever, at a movie theater, yelled at the screen for how shitty it was. That is how bad this movie was, that I was like, I don't fucking care if I offend anybody. This movie's dog shit, and I'm gonna mystery science this thing while watching this in the theater. That is how bad this movie is. We're gonna be doing that. We have another action film that is critically beloved by everybody, but Brian's not the biggest fan of it, so we're gonna have him rewatch it. And then we have another horror film that we love immensely, and it's a horror film that probably not a lot of people have seen, kind of like Near Dark, but we actually really like this one. Figure out what those films are, and we'll be back next week. We are the Weekend Crusaders. My name's Sean Wassacroop. That is Brian Michaels. Until next time, in case we don't see you, good morning, good afternoon, and good night, Movie Crusaders.
You're still here. It's over. Go home.